Hi, in this video we're going to see how to configure GlobalProtect on the Palo Alto firewall. But first I'll show you exactly what I've done so that if you find yourself in the same situation, you can use this configuration, adapt it, and make it work. All right, let's take a look for a moment. This is the usual lab you always see, and here is the Palo Alto firewall. Now, this Palo Alto firewall has the connection here through the management port. You can ignore the rest, the router, the little cloud, they don't matter for now. This is my internet connection, which is connected to a router, in this case, a Microtech, and I'll explain later why, as well as to my Windows machine. Obviously, all of this is behind NAT. So what did I do to make it work? I did this. I went to my routers page. Then I actually went here to the DMZ, which, if I'm not mistaken, is here, close advanced DMZ. And I set it so that all requests coming from my public IP address are forwarded to 192.168.0.97, which is nothing more actually less activated than this interface here. Now that I've shown you this, let's see how to configure it and what we need to do. So this is our Palo Alto dashboard. And before we dive into the configuration and various explanations, we need to create and prepare a few things. Let's take a look. By clicking on device at the bottom, you'll find local user database. And let's go ahead and create one or more users. Now, in this case, the users are local. If you have an Active Directory server, it's more appropriate to use Active Directory groups for the users. So let's name this user Valerio and give him a password. And click OK. Let's create another one so you can at least see the differences. We'll call this one Marco. Another password and click OK. Then we need to create an authentication profile before continuing. By the way, a lot of people watch my videos but aren't subscribed to the channel, so please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. It doesn't cost you anything at all, but it gives the channel a chance to grow and also signals to the YouTube algorithm that there are comments, likes, and so on. Since I believe I'm providing value to you, the viewer, and helping you solve problems, your like or comment is really important. So don't be stingy, leave a like. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and let's continue. At the top left, you'll see Authentication Profile. Click here. At the bottom, click Add and give it a name, for example, Local Users. For type here, as you can see, there's none. So no cloud, no dedicated server, local database, which is our case, Radius, LDAP, TACAX+, SAML, and Kerberos. So let's select Local Database. We'll leave everything else as default. In Advanced, here it gives us the list, all, which obviously means all users or just one. In this case, I'll just enter Valerio because that's the user who will actually perform the test. So, okay, once that's done, we just need to configure the networking part. Let's go to Network at the top, then Interfaces. Select Tunnel Interface, and let's create a tunnel interface. For example, let's assign it address 200 and call it GlobalProtect. For the virtual router, select Default, and for the security zone, I've seen some people use an existing security zone like outside, and while that's okay, it's not considered best practice. We need to create a specific zone for GlobalProtect. So I'm going to create a specific zone for GlobalProtect. New zone, click New Zone, and let's call it GlobalProtect. For the interface, we assign the tunnel interface. In this particular case, I can't select it because I'm already inside the tunnel interface, so that's fine. Done. Make sure to enable user identification. This step is really important. Click OK, and now you see we're in the GlobalProtect zone. As for the IP address, in some cases, I've seen people assign the public IP address to the tunnel interface, and that's a mistake. It works, but it's wrong because you're exposing the tunnel interface to the internet, which could cause problems. So we need to give it an internal IP address. Which internal IP address should we assign? Well, for example, if your clients, that is your remote users connecting to your firewall, will use an IP address, let's say a network, in this case 200.192.168.200.0/24, then we will assign them the IP address 192.168.200.1/24, and that's done here. Now let's move on to a part that's, as they say in English, a bit tricky, the certificate. In a lot of videos, you'll see something like this. By clicking on device on the left, you'll see certificate management, then certificate. Many people during the videos click there and tell you to generate the certificate. Click generate. We give the certificate a name. Let's call it CrazyNet. For example, common name, IP, or FQDN. In this case, my interface is the private IP address 192.168.0.97, which is the outside interface. Of course, if you have a public IP, you would enter the public IP address, for example. Now, at this point, they tell you to add the certificate authority. For example, for country, we write Malta. Then you can provide it with the locality, such as the city or region, and the organization, let's call it CrazyNet, for example, and so on. Then you instruct it to generate, and it does so. However, this is not considered a best practice and could also lead to potential trust issues, as well as man-in-the-middle attacks and similar risks. I wrote a post about this on my LinkedIn profile, and if I remember correctly, I also wrote about it in the Telegram group, specifically in the security section. So we need to pay close attention to this. Now let's see instead how this problem can be solved. This problem can actually be solved very simply. You just need to go to one of the many sites available, for example, 0SSL. In this case, I have a free 90-day certificate, which in this case is vpn.crazycyberspace.club, because crazycyberspace.club is the blog of the channel, and vpn. Is the subdomain I created, where this subdomain specifically points to my public IP address, which is the unique address assigned to my network. I hope that's clear. So now at this stage, I have my public certificate. At this point, let's see how to install the certificate and also how to import it. So here on import, let's give it a name for easy identification. We'll call it CrazyNet. Browse. Here, in this case, the folder where the certificates are located opens right away. When you download the certificate, you get 3 files. The CA bundle, the certificate, and the private key. And they need to be installed in a very specific order, otherwise the private key won't work. You could end up wasting a whole day trying to figure it out. So the first one is the CA bundle. Here we click OK. Please check the box and then click on import. For example, after that you can browse your files again. Select the certificate and let us call it, just for clarity, CrazyNet CA. Now we select import private key, browse again. Here we have the private key file. Here you need to enter a password. You can make one up, for example, 1234567 1234567. Obviously, this is just a demonstration video. The password should ideally be complex. Click OK and it has successfully created the entire certificate chain. This is in fact a public certificate that is used for secure communications. So when we open the website, specifically the site vpn.crazycyberspace, we are able to see that the certificate is being used to establish a secure connection. Club, the site will appear with the correct certificate. At this point, what do we have left to do? We need to go here to SSL.dls. Click add at the bottom. Let's give it a name. Let's call it CrazyNet SSL profile, for example. For the certificate, we have our CrazyNet certificate. Why? Best practices recommend at least version 1.2. So I suggest you follow best practices for security. For now, I'll leave it as is, but it's better if you use a higher version because it's obviously more secure and provides better protection. Now, click OK to continue. At this point in the process, we can finally move on to configuring GlobalProtect, which is an important step. So let's go ahead and navigate to the network section now. Then here we have the options Global, Portal, and Gateway available in this section. On the left side, locate and select the Gateway option. Then proceed to the Add button and assign it a name. For example, CrazyNet Gateway. Interface, your outside interface, which in my case is 1.2. Select the public IP address, because clearly this is not a public IP address. Then for authentication, under authentication at the very top of the interface, select our CrazyNet SSL profile, which is the specific SSL profile we have created for this purpose. This is the profile you should use. Next, go to Client Authentication here in the menu and click on the Add button to proceed. For the name, let's call it CrazyNet Client Auth. Auth stands for authentication. I do this so that if I get any errors or issues later on, I can more easily understand which section the error refers to in the operating system. For the authentication profile, select local users, which, if you remember, are the ones we created right at the very beginning. Then simply leave everything else exactly as it is. Allowed authentication with user credential or client certificate. Here we select yes. We say yes, because if we leave it as no, it will look for the certificate on the remote computer, which obviously isn't there. So we click OK, then we go to Agent, and here's where it gets interesting. For tunnel mode, we need to select Tunnel Interface, the interface we created, which was 200. Here we leave everything as it is. Then we go to Client Settings. In Client Settings, we click Add, give it a name, and we'll call it Gateway. The client settings configuration. Here we leave everything as is. Source user is if you use Active Directory, which we do not have. Operation system, all. Region, if you want them to access from all regions or only from specific regions, but we select all. Authentication overwrite. In this case, we tell it to generate cookies, to accept cookies, and to encrypt cookies with our certificate. Then, cookie lifetime, 24 hours. What does this mean? The client can stay connected for 24 hours without the cookie being refreshed. So the cookie expires and they are asked to log in again. So let's set it to 8 hours, since on average a person works 8 hours, 8 hours. Then IP pulse. Keep this pulse in mind because you'll see it again in a bit, and there's a difference between the two. So for IP pulse, we said that our network for our clients is 200, 190, 160, 200. Let's have it start from 10 up to 192.168.200.254. Here, we need to specify which networks the client should be able to reach when connected. Imagine the traffic in the tunnel. Should all of it go through the tunnel, or can some things be excluded from it? Obviously, excluding some things can make the VPN faster and lighten the load on the remote office. This is called split tunneling. Here, we have to decide what to do with this client. Do we want all the traffic generated by the client to go through the main office? Yes? Perfect. Then we'll enter the IP. 0.0.0.0.0.0. Of course, this is something you need to carefully consider. If you have Active Directory, so with groups, you can create two groups where some users have split tunneling and others do not. So what does that mean? It means that all the traffic will go directly through the main office, while for those who are in the split tunnel group, part of the traffic, for example, YouTube or Twitch, tweets and so on, will go directly to the internet without passing through the main office. So let's go ahead, and here we're done. Now, about client pool, client IP pool. I mentioned this to you earlier. I told you to keep this IP pool in mind. The main difference between the two is this. Here, I'm telling it for this profile, in this case, gateway client settings, that it should use this IP address along with various other settings. Now, about client and IP pool. Earlier, I told you to remember this IP pool because you might make a mistake. The difference between this IP pool and that IP pool is basically this. If I click add, I can create as many profiles as I want with different IPs. Then with Active Directory groups, for example, Valerio has the IP 192.168.200 and Marco has the IP 192.168.100. And they have different IP rules. Whereas here with the IP pool, I can create one or more IP ranges, of course, but they are shared. That is for everyone. It's shared like the network service. For example, if I put 8.8.8, which is Google, and 8.8.4.4 here, this DNS will be used by everyone who is part of the IP pool, whereas this one won't. In fact, let me show you. I'll take a step back. By clicking here on network service, I need to specify the DNS server. Otherwise, I won't be able to access the internet. 8.8.4.4. Okay, at this point, let's go to portal here on the left. Click on add at the bottom and create our portal. So we'll simply call it the CrazyNet _ portal interface, just like before. For the IP address configuration, just as before, we will leave all the default settings exactly as they are, making no changes at this stage, and then proceed to the next step, which is authentication. In the authentication section, we need to select the appropriate certificate that will be used for this process. To do this, click on the Add button and then provide a name for the certificate entry. In this example, the name we will use is CrazyNet Client Authentication, or alternatively, the portal. This naming helps us easily identify the certificate later on if needed. Then, as before, allowed users authentication with user credential or client certificate. Yes. Then for authentication profile, we assign it our local users that we created at the beginning and click OK. After that, let's go to agent. So this trusted root CA, if I add the certificate, what happens? Additionally, I select this install root certificate. When the client connects, it automatically installs this certificate on the computer, and that's basically what it's for. So in this particular scenario, I'll go ahead and remove it because I don't need it for my current setup or requirements. Now, let's proceed to the next step. We click on the option to add authentication, and then we create what is called the CrazyNet Authentication Portal Agent. This involves setting up the portal agent, as well as configuring the portal certificate to none, and then saving the credential information. At this point, we are presented with several choices regarding how we want to handle the credentials. We can choose yes to save the credentials, no if we don't want to save them, or we can opt to save only the username. For this demonstration, I'll select the option to save only the username, just as I did before in previous steps. Next, we move on to creating cookies and accepting cookies, which is an important part of the process. We set an expiration time for these cookies, and in this case, we choose a duration of 8 hours. After that, we select our certificate, which will be used to encrypt the cookies and ensure their security. Then at this stage, we leave all the other settings as they are without making any further changes. For the internal configuration, we don't need to make any adjustments, so we can skip that part. However, for the external configuration, in this particular case, by clicking the Add button, we need to create our portal. In my specific situation, the portal will be located at vpn.crazy cyberspace club, so we'll call it that. CrazyGV, which is the name I'm giving it for simplicity, and I'm choosing to use a short name here because I'll show you the reason for that in just a moment. So in this step, we set it as vpn.crazycyberspace.club, which is the address we'll be using. Then in the next field, we add region, any, which means it will apply to any region. And after that, we simply click OK to confirm. Done, the configuration is now complete. However, we still need to do a bit of additional tuning, because while the portal configuration is finished, we're still missing two important things, NAT and the rules. So let's take a closer look at NAT and the rules together. Let's go to the policy section and then proceed to NAT, of course, as that's the next step in the process. Let's wait for it to load. So we click on Add. For clarity in this discussion, we will refer to this configuration as GlobalProtect NAT. This name will help us easily identify and talk about this specific setup throughout our explanation. Original packet source zone, GlobalProtect, destination zone, outside destination interface, the interface where the internet is. Then here, if you want to do a one-to-one NAT, etc., etc. But in this case, it's just to allow our remote clients to access the internet from our company. So let's set the path, which is the first IP endpoint. Interface 1/2, in my case, IP address 97.0.0.97. We click OK. Last thing before testing the policy. Now, as you can see, this policy is any, so it basically allows everything, but I'm going to change it for a moment. So inside destination, outside. Because otherwise it really doesn't make any sense at all. This particular one was originally made specifically for the other BGP lab environment. Now, let's go ahead and create a brand new policy together. Click on Add, and for this new policy, we'll call it GlobalProtect. Policy, how creative. Here, the description and other details are up to you. Source, GlobalProtect. Destination, outside, application, any, service, the default ones, action, allow. And then click OK. Then at this point, we're basically done. All that's left is to just commit and see if it actually works. So to check if it works, we need one thing, which I'll tell you about now. So if you're inside the company, like in my case, where you have a unique IP address, again, like in my case, you can't test it from inside because Palo Alto will block you, obviously, since it wouldn't make sense, right? If you're in the company, why would you need to connect to the VPN from within the company? And so Palo Alto blocks you. Obviously, if you have more than one public IP address, then in that case, you can do it. To do this, what did I come up with so I could make this video and also run the tests? Let me show you what I came up with. First, let's finish checking if it has finished applying the policies. Warning, tunnel IPv6 is not enabled. Collect HIP. HIP is a feature of Palo Alto. If you're interested, leave me a comment and I'll let you know. I'll explain what HIP is. Close. So, what did I come up with here on the router, which you can't see because I'm in the way? On this MikroTik router, I set up NordVPN, which you can find in the video you're seeing now. On this MikroTik router, I configured NordVPN, and I'll leave you the link here in the video. So when I open the computer, this other one, this computer here, if I go online, I no longer appear with my real IP, but instead with the IP address precisely from NordVPN, which I set up by configuring the MikroTik router with access to NordVPN. You can find the video here. Furthermore, the computer on the left will go online with a different IP address, which I'll show you. It's this computer here on the left. Let's open our trusty Chrome browser. The speed obviously isn't at its best right now, so let's go to myoip.it and let's see together what IP address it gives us at this moment. I'll take this opportunity to point something out to you which I think is important, so please pay close attention as we go through this step. Using a generic certificate, using a self-generated certificate, as you see in so many videos, you get this error here, not secure. Usually there's a red line, and before you enter the site, it tells you to click to continue. This leads users to click anyway, just to be able to connect at least the first time. This means that a malicious person like me could create a site identical to your company's, send it by email to one of your employees and say, look, we've changed the address, click here. He clicks, enters his username and password, and I get them. So always use public certificates. As you can see, it says Germany. I'm exiting from Germany now. But here we need proof, so I already have my VPN client, vpn.crazycyberspace. Club Connect, let's see if it works. If it works, it should ask me for the username and password. Thank you. The username is already there because I had already done other tests. Maybe it's because I don't remember the password. I think it's this one. Connect. If it's not this one, it's because of an uppercase or lowercase letter. I don't remember. Connecting, let's see. Currently retrieving portal information from the system. It takes a little while, especially the first time, because it has to check things, etc. Okay, I think we're connected, guys. Let's check. Once again, the speed really isn't the best at the moment, mainly because there are quite a lot of different things running in the background, but please be patient anyway. All right, click here. It's still continuing to receive, retrieving portal. In the meantime, let's check here if it authenticated correctly, because I don't remember the password. So let's take a look at Monitor and also GlobalProtect, and we should have Valerio, who is currently attempting to connect to the system from Germany. Here he is joining the session now. As you can see, everything appears to be working as expected. He is still currently trying to connect because he is actively looking for the most optimal available option. The best available gateway, I'm showing you this as an opportunity to explain that we can actually have more than one gateway within our network infrastructure. For instance, you might have a firewall located in Italy, another one in Germany, and perhaps an additional one that is hosted in the cloud and so on. This kind of setup provides both flexibility and redundancy. So depending on the user's current location, they will connect to the gateway that is geographically closest to them, which helps to optimize both speed and security. This approach ensures that users always have the best possible connection, no matter where they are accessing the network from. All right, the connection was successful, or at least I think so, because I saw it says connected, Crazy GW Gateway.